Hello and welcome to Wisco Legacy. I'm your host, Corey Kundert. On Wisco Legacy, I talk to interesting, inspiring, and successful people from the great state of Wisconsin and hear all about their journey. You can find me on all the podcast platforms. I also have a video version of each podcast on YouTube. You can follow me along on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And I also have a website, wiscolegacy.com. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey, I'm Cody Endres, special education teacher and head wrestling coach for Lodi High School, and this is my Wisco Legacy.
Welcome to Wisco Legacy. I'm your host, Corey Kundert. On today's episode, we have Cody Endres. He's a special education teacher, and he's the head wrestling coach for the Lodi wrestling program. Cody, welcome to Wisco Legacy.
Hey, man, thanks for having me on. This is awesome. I've checked out the first 2 episodes, some incredible stories, inspiring stuff. And yeah, just appreciate you jumping out, taking the leap, and starting something like this. That's brave, and this is awesome.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. So we're gonna start this interview. We're gonna talk about the community that you grew up in. You, like myself, seem to be very prideful of where you're from. You're from Lodi. It's a great community. I'm from Monroe. We're a great community as well. So, you want to talk about the community of Lodi and how it's really shaped you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually grew up in a little town called Dane, which is less than 1,000 people, about 5 miles away from Lodi. The Lodi community is made up of Dane, Harmony Grove, Oakey, and Lodi. We all kind of funnel together. But yeah, small town, but just an incredible feel. You know, I went there K through 12, and it really shaped who I was.
Yeah, growing up, you and I wrestled quite a bit growing up in middle school, and not as much in high school, but we definitely hit the mat a few times. Being around, just seeing Lodi at different wrestling tournaments, there's a lot of sense of pride for the community. Can you talk about the impact that the community has on student athletes?
Yeah, for sure. Our former high school principal, and he's actually our superintendent now, he kind of came up with this tagline that just says Lodi Pride. And it just hits home. It's everywhere. It's all over sports, posters and shirts. It's in our gymnasium, and it just kind of really, really encompasses the Lodi community. And everyone takes pride in our community, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's in the arts, whether it's music, whether it's sports. Everyone really, really enjoys this community. It's a fantastic place to live. There's just so much support.
That's awesome. Having that community backing is definitely helpful for being around in sports. I know when I was in high school, our football and wrestling programs were average at best. Our football program wasn't great, but we had a really great basketball program, and we actually won state when I was in high school. And the sense of community, I think that really helped us propel up to win that state title. All right, so Cody, I know you were a big athlete in high school. Can you talk about when you got involved in sports and what sports you were involved in?
So I started my, youth athletic career probably the end of kindergarten, playing t-ball. I think my mom or dad probably asked me to sign up for soccer as well, but I never really liked running. Still not much of a runner, so soccer wasn't an avenue I was going to pursue. But played t-ball from kindergarten on to 4th grade and long after that. But really started with football in 4th grade. We started putting the pads on, and growing up as a Packer and a Badger fan, football was my first love. So loved football, loved playing that. In 5th grade, I went out for the basketball team. I was a bigger kid, kind of matured faster than most kids. So ended up being taller and just went out for the basketball team. That career was pretty short-lived. I remember one game we were playing Verona, and one of my best friends, he was a good athlete as well. He scored the first point, got fouled. We gave up the next 77 points.
Wow.
I can't make this stuff up. And we scored the last point of the game as well. So we lost 77-3. Wow. Yeah, there should have been a mercy rule or something. It was atrocious. I remember falling out intentionally in the first half saying, I'm so embarrassed. I'm never doing this again. So that was the end of my basketball career. Shortly thereafter, I wrestled for the first time in 5th grade. Didn't have a lot of success, was pretty slow with it at first. Kind of gradually came into wrestling, did a little bit in 6th grade, kind of took off in 7th grade. So those are all the sports I played. And then my senior year, after I competed in wrestling and football, I actually went out for track for the first time, which was a great experience. I really enjoyed not having the pressure of kind of being one of the better players in the team. Like on football and wrestling, I was just kind of a guy and ended up being a key part of the team when we won conference and regionals for the first time. So it was just awesome being on a team when they had to accomplish something that they never had before. So that was really, really cool. And I just thank my track coaches for letting me come out that senior year.
Awesome. What made you decide to do that?
Our head football coach, Dave Poles, he was actually the throwing coach for track. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm not much of a runner. So
yeah.
It was throw, and that was it. So I just got to hang out with him, lift weights and throw shot put. So it was a really cool experience. And with it being a guys and a girls team together, like that was really awesome. All of a sudden I was there at the girls practices and cheering them on and high-fiving them with their accomplishments and vice versa. Like that was a really cool sense of community when you have different sports teams, but we're all together as one. So that was pretty cool.
That's great. It sounds like you learned a lot through that experience. So being a multi-sport athlete, I know there's a lot of people in this day and age who think you need to specialize to get to the next level. You were a football player, wrestler, and a little bit of a track athlete there too. Talk about your experience as a multi-sport athlete and what do you think the benefits are to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the most important things. Like we talk about with our athletes in this community, with our parents and stuff too. You know, as a student athlete, to be successful, the most important thing is you need to be a great student. You have to take care of that first and foremost. Second, you need to be a multi-sport athlete. You don't have to do all three if you don't want to, but you should really have two sports and really give a lot of great effort to them. And then third is just be in the weight room. You got to lift weights. You got to be strong. You got to stretch. You got to be fit. All those really important intangibles. But we preach multi-sport athletes in this community. I mean, our head football coach, he was my former coach, one of my best friends, or I should say one of my biggest role models I have. And even, you know, the basketball coach, who wrestling and basketball always have this interesting dynamic. You know, I keep score Friday nights at the football game on the clock, and he does the announcing, so we work together. So it's really cool for our community to see, wait, up in the press box, there's the wrestling coach and the basketball coach, and they're working together. That's interesting, but he supports my program, I support his. We all support each other's. So obviously Lodi and community is pretty big. So to have all the coaches across all the sports, across all the genders, you know, preaching the same message, it really hits home.
That's great that you have that community built right in there. So we're going to switch gears a little bit, talk a little bit about your career, wrestling specifically. This is not a wrestling podcast, even though my first few guests are wrestling related. It's one of my big passions, so obviously I'm going to talk about it. You mentioned you started wrestling in 5th grade. What got you into the sport of wrestling? Yeah,
so I think everyone has a really unique how did you start wrestling story. You know, it's not like other sports where your parents did it and they're like, sign me up. My dad was a wrestler in high school for a few years, but he never pushed it on me. Like, I don't think I even knew he was a wrestler until I started getting into it. But thankfully I had some cousins in a neighboring town and an uncle that just kind of brought me along to practice. Like, hey, you like sports? We're getting into this. Let's go. So really thankful to my Uncle Troy and my cousin Jake for doing that. But here in Lodi, I think it was 5th grade. It could have very well been 4th. I just remember going up to the wrestling room for the first time. And I didn't know it at the time, but Coach Reinwan, Coach Jack Reinwan, who was a national champion for Wisconsin, took a world bronze medal at the 1977 World Championships for the United States. Could have been on the 1980 Olympic team, but the Olympics were boycotted. You know, Hall of Fame coach, all these things. I knew nothing about it. I just liked him because he was a smaller guy. I was a bigger kid. He was about my size. He had a lot of energy, and he was really, really fun to work with. So just that alone, like really hooked me into wrestling the first couple practices. And then we had a 2-time state champion. His name was Kelby Mack, pretty big in our community, you know, football, wrestling, baseball, state champ. He stayed after practice one night, and I don't even think he worked with me, but just let me like jump on him and wrestle with him. And man, that was awesome. You know, he was my hero. And, you know, fast forward, now we're friends and I got to coach with him and stuff. It's pretty cool. But back then that meant a lot. 6th grade, I went to a wrestling tournament. I went 0-3. I got pinned 3 times. And if it wasn't for Coach Chris Perzik, who was actually my high school coach, you know, I don't know if I would have continued wrestling. You know, going 0-3, getting pinned 3 times is a very, very humbling experience. And I was struggling with it, but he was my Phi Ed teacher at the time. And I remember one day I walked into PE class And he goes, Endres. And I kind of go, what's up? He's like, you're going to be a heavyweight state champion someday. I was, what? You know, the fact that the high school varsity coach said that about me, like, man, I was interested in wrestling again. That same year, our high school program actually won this team state title. So 2004, they dominated, won like 53-9. That was the first time I'd ever seen Lodi wrestle in person. I saw the celebrations, I saw the trophies, the medals, and you know the momentum was starting to build. I was like, man, this is pretty cool. I wrestled in 7th grade for our middle school program. I went about 500. You know, I did okay. Got pinned a lot.
I think we might have wrestled that year. I remember wrestling Lodi in some dual meet, and I feel like we might have wrestled there at one point, but that's not when I remember wrestling you. We wrestled so much in like 7th and 8th grade, like every weekend.
Especially 8th grade, yeah. And, you know, and my life really changed. And, you know, I developed a passion for wrestling when Coach Laverne Ziegler, who was our middle school coach at the time, took me to 2005 individual state championships, just the Saturday night, just the finals. And I just saw that arena. I saw the atmosphere. I was hooked. Like I knew what I wanted to do. I had a goal. You know, Coach Laverne is just incredible. He just retired. He coached 38 years for us.
Wow.
I'm like, man, Coach, without you bringing me that night, like I don't know what my career would have been. So that was a life-changing moment.
Yeah, I've been to every single state championship since I think the year 2000, other than last year with the COVID stuff. You know, I never made the tournament, obviously, but I still get goosebumps to this day seeing the March of Champions. It's phenomenal.
It's a special thing. Yeah. And even if you're not a wrestling fanatic, it's just a spectacle. Like you can just appreciate that march and knowing what those athletes did to get there and, you know, what their families did, what their coaches did, what it means to their communities. It's a cool 2 or 3 minutes.
For sure. Yeah. It's like, I think I'm getting goosebumps right now just thinking about it. It's the pinnacle of Wisconsin State wrestling. So it's awesome to see. You know, Lodi is one of the most historic wrestling programs in the state, in my opinion. You were named the head coach at a fairly young age. Talk about what it was like to be offered that head coaching position.
Yeah, so I was named head coach at 25 years old. At that time, man, I was ready to set the world on fire. I thought I was ready. I thought I knew everything, and man, I made a lot of mistakes. You know, I truly did. You know, I had a plan and a vision. But looking back, like it was my plan and my vision. It was not our plan or our vision. I'm just very, very thankful that there was some people there who just remained loyal, remained patient, continued to help. And we're in a really great spot now. I think I've learned a lot from these incredible people. But yeah, taking over a program at a young age, you know, it was learn on the go. And thankfully, we've been able to kind of work through those rough spots. I think we're in a great spot now moving forward.
That's great. I'm going to switch back to your wrestling career a little bit. You know, knowing that Lodi is a pretty historic program, what was it like to put that Lodi singlet on for the first time?
I was so nervous. Like my first time wrestling varsity was the beginning of the year, freshman year. I'd won a wrestle off against a returning varsity guy. It was kind of, even I didn't really expect to win the wrestle off. I just wrestled hard and, you know, came out ahead, and him and I kind of traded the spot back and forth that year. I became the starter at the end of the year as well, but I was so nervous I puked.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was at home. I went out there and I got pinned, and I think we won the duel like 60-9. And I was one of 2 guys to lose and get pinned. And, you know, it was a rough start. And then we had another duel against a conference team. I got a pin there, so I felt a lot better. Going into the Saturday tournament, you know, first round, I'm wrestling a really highly ranked kid because that's how pairings work, and I get pinned again. And an assistant coach of ours, Johnny Adler, who was a state champion as well, you know, I remember he pulled me aside after he got pinned. He's like, this is ridiculous. Like, if you're going to lose, you're going to fight. You're not going to get pinned. Like, this is Lodi wrestling. We have expectations for all of our athletes. And he really gave it to me, but I needed that. And it really changed me. You know, I think about that as a teacher and a coach. Like sometimes the hard conversations needed to happen. They usually do. You know, I don't ever look back at a time when I was like a coach was too hard on me. I don't know if that's a thing. Obviously there's some situations, but I appreciate how hard he was. I needed it, and it really changed me. Yeah,
you wrestled 215 freshman year, right?
All 4 years, yeah.
All 4 years, yeah. I was varsity in 189 and 215 freshman year, and I felt the same way. Like I was, I think 8-18 my freshman year, and a lot of my losses were pins. And um, halfway through the year, I had to bump up to 215, and I was only 185 pounds. So that's a man's weight for sure, wrestling those big guys. And it was definitely a challenge. I wrestled some JV tournaments that year too and went undefeated. So I've was kind of like a tweener. Like I was pretty good for JV, but varsity, it wasn't there. But it's definitely a challenging weight as a young guy to hop in and have some success. So but you ended up having some success the next year. You made it to state.
Yeah. Yeah. The next year, I made the state tournament, took third. I look back at the improvement that I made at that time. I took fifth at regionals the year before out of 5 guys. I got pinned right away and I was out. To taking third at the state tournament, was pretty incredible, but it didn't happen on my own. There was, Steve Dibble was a coach that just put hours and hours and hours into me all summer, all spring, all fall. Nick Ziegler, Coach Perzik, Johnny Adler, all the coaches I had, like without their help, I wouldn't have got there. And did I put a lot of time in? Yeah. Did I work really hard? Yeah. But if it wasn't for those coaches, I wouldn't have even scratched the surface at that point.
Right. Yeah, that support system definitely helps for sure. So I want to talk about some of your more memorable matches during your high school career. I know you guys had a lot of team success, and you obviously had a lot of individual success. Are there some matches that stand out to you?
Yeah, well, I guess it's weird. Like when I think about some of the more memorable matches, like I think of my friends and my teammates and the matches that they won. Oddly enough, I think it in a weird way that meant more. In my career, I was just so focused and business orientated. Like I'd get a big win, I'd beat a ranked guy, and it was just on to the next thing. Which I think sometimes really held me back because I didn't really enjoy the process or enjoy the success. But one of my best friends, Tony Zeman, he was a JV kid as a freshman, threw into the varsity lineup and pinned the state runner-up. It was incredible. Cody Cable, another one of my best friends, watching him beat a state champion 2 years in a row at the conference tournament, like that was incredible. Kyle McKern, he's a guy that never wrestled varsity until regionals his junior year. 3 weeks later, he wins an overtime match in the team state finals to help us win a team state title in 2008. Those matches are the ones that I think of like funnest matches in my career. Like I think of, and then just our duel against Iowa Grant 2008. That year, 2008, we were not favored to make it to team state. Lodi had made it for like 6 or 7 straight years at that point. We graduated a lot of guys the year before. We heard the rumors, the cupboards were bare. Coach Rywan's gone. The program's not going to be as well. And we went out and won the state tournament that year. And we did that by defeating Iowa Grant in the team sectional finals. I forget how it goes. I think with like 3 matches left, we were down by like 10 or something. And we knew it might have even been more. I think it was maybe 12. We knew we needed an in, a major, and an upset, something like that. And Tony Zeman goes out there and gets a pin in a big duel, pins a guy, only pin of the dual meet. Dakota Cable goes out there and beats a guy that had beaten him earlier in the year, just dominates him. And then to watch our captain and eventual state champion Logan Einerson go out there and cradle a kid and hold him for 2 minutes as the clock winds down to go to team state, like you talk about goosebumps in our home gym. That's why I wrestle. That's why I coach. It's for things like that. I mean, that was 13 years ago. It's still a big deal in this town, in this community,
It's interesting that the more memorable moments that you have are your teammates and your friends. Like that's probably a big reason why you're in coaching right now is you think about others and you want to succeed with the team. So that's really awesome. Last question on your high school wrestling career. So you placed 3 times in state, you got third, and you were runner-up twice. What did you learn from those defeats that you've used moving forward? Because I know I don't personally know, but losing a state championship has to be really tough. So what did you learn from that you've learned that you've used moving forward?
Yeah, the struggle will strengthen you. It's a motto in our program. It's on our handbook. We got it on shirts. I say it all the time. Like the struggle will strengthen you. It might take years. You might never understand it, but someday you'll have some perspective and some understanding. I didn't handle those losses well at all. I look back and I'm kind of ashamed of how I handled them with just like maybe my attitude and my inability to move on to the next thing. I think one failure kind of led to the next one and led to the next one. I never gave myself a clean break. And then just also like looking back, as a high school kid, I thought I was doing everything right, outworking everybody, not cutting any corners. And then you kind of go to college or you become an adult and you realize like, man, you cut corners. You thought you were doing everything, but there's a lot of things you weren't doing right. So now in my life, I want to leave no stone unturned in everything I do. I question everything in every part of my life. I'm very analytical and evaluative now. I think if I would have done that back then, I probably would have had a lot more success. As much pain as those losses caused, I wouldn't trade them for the world. They shaped me into the person I am today. Without those losses, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I'm just thankful for some of those scars that were left that I can look at every now and then and be like, yeah, that was a hard time, but we got through it, and I'm a better person for it.
Yeah, and it's just a moment in time in your life. I mean, it's as a senior in high school, you're stepping on the mat for the last time. You obviously want to have your hand raised, but it's a moment in time. You have a lot more to do with the rest of your life. So awesome perspective on that. Glad it's really helped shape you, and it's not defining who you are. All right. So after high school, you went to UW-LaCrosse. What went into that decision?
Yeah, there's a story there. I always told myself if I would have won the state title in wrestling, I was going to Whitewater to play football. I absolutely loved football. I had a really, really good senior year. I just played much better than I ever had before. We lost in level 4 of the playoffs, so I was pretty sour about that. We had a big lead, 21-7. We blew it. We lost. The team that we lost to went and won the state title, and that would have been Lodi's first state title in football. So that was a really, really big deal to us and our community. We felt like we let them down. How I said a little bit earlier, like I sometimes let my failures, fall into the next one. And I was, coming off a hard football season. So I said, if I win a state title, going to Whitewater, playing football. Obviously didn't win a state title. Came down to Augsburg and LaCrosse, two of the best schools in Division III. The year I was being recruited, they were both number 1 and 2. I remember going to the dual meet and getting recruited by both coaches during the dual, after the dual. So as a high school senior, you think that's pretty cool to get that attention and whatnot. Kind of shallow thinking, like you shouldn't be chasing after that. You should be chasing, what's my best academic spot? Where could I wrestle at? How is this best for my family? Those things. When I went on my final recruiting trip, I left Dave Malachek's office and I'm going to LaCrosse. This is the place. But at the time, I was also really good friends with Chad Johnson, who was a state champion from DeSoto. Him and I had trained together. We were really good buddies. He's like, dude, I can't get into LaCrosse. Like, I'm going to Augsburg. So I went to Augsburg with him. Spent the summer there doing team camps and wrestling a couple weeks. It was great. Got to meet a lot of guys, bond really well with the coaching staff and whatnot. And then one of the final days, I think parents came up and you kind of got to meet the families and check in with tuition office and get your dorm room, things like that. I got the tuition bill, and it was vastly different from what I was told throughout the whole recruitment process. And at that moment in time, for a middle class family, there was no way we were doing it. And I just felt lied to. I felt cheated throughout the whole recruiting process. So kind of told the coaches, like, this is ridiculous. I'm out of here. And they talked to financial aid and they tried to offer a different package and this and that. But at that time, the trust was gone. Mm-hmm. So I quickly reached back out to Coach Malachek, who unfortunately, like when I chose Augsburg, I didn't do a great job of letting him know and letting him know why. He meant so much to me during the recruiting process. And I felt so guilty for going someplace else that, I think I sent him like an email like a week later, like I'm going to Augsburg, which is just a classless thing to do. But to his credit, when I emailed him and said I'm interested in lacrosse, my goodness, he called me. You could hear the excitement in his voice, said, hey, get up here. Let's talk. Let's go. Went into his office, kind of said, here's what I'm looking for. And, I had a couple points that I wanted to make sure were okay. We hugged and I became an Eagle. One of the best choices I've ever made. And, just his ability to forgive and forget during those times. And he helped me get into school in August and get me set up and just welcome me like a son. Dave Malachek is the man.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. I've never interacted with him, but I've heard a lot of the lacrosse wrestlers just revere him. So that's awesome. So beyond just wrestling at lacrosse, how did lacrosse help impact the rest of your life? I know you obviously graduated from there and stuff, but how did lacrosse help impact your life?
Yeah, it's a great school. Athletically, they always dominate the WIAC and the cup that they always have. Academically, they're extremely strong. The average student GPA is really high. The student athlete GPA is even higher than the student body, which is incredible. It's a beautiful city with the bluffs and with the river and with the campus. It was truly my home for 5 years. Like when I had to leave lacrosse, it was devastating. I went through like a 6-month transition period, leaving lacrosse, leaving my friends, leaving wrestling, leaving my social life, all those things. Like it was really, really hard. So lacrosse meant a great deal. I just look at my wedding. If I had gone to Whitewater, one, I wouldn't have married the beautiful woman I call my wife. I met her at lacrosse, but all my friends that were in my wedding, most of them were from lacrosse. I look out the tables. So many of my wrestling teammates were there, coaches. So yeah, I truly wouldn't be here today without lacrosse and without that experience.
My wife went to lacrosse for a year after, and I went up there a few times, and it's such a beautiful place up there, and it's an awesome college town for sure. I'm excited this year. Lacrosse in Wisconsin and some of the Arkansas teams are having a big dual meet up there for wrestling, and it'll be exciting to see some more eyes on lacrosse up there.
Yeah, shout out to Coach Malachek, Coach Bono, and all those guys for doing that. Like Division 1, 2, and 3 dual all happening at once in the state of Wisconsin. Like we should road trip up there and Wisco Legacy do a live broadcast or something. Like that's incredible. Friday, November 12th, that date is stamped on my calendar. I'm going.
That's awesome. You talk about balancing school and wrestling in college. And that's a lot to manage while you're in college. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, Coach Malachek, he always said, like, guys, there's 3 things that being a student athlete really encompasses. School, wrestling, and social life. He's like, you can only be good at 2 at the same time. Like you have to pick which 2. And there was times where I was really good at school, really good at wrestling, and my social life suffered, which would have been the best path. Take care of wrestling, you're a student athlete. The social aspect will come. There was times I was good at wrestling and good at being social, and then my school suffered. There was times where I was good at being social in school, and my wrestling suffered. So I kind of went through the whole gamut, right? But it just helps me now as a wrestling coach and a teacher and a father, like prioritize and put the first things first. I think it was Warren Buffett. One time he was talking to an apprentice of his, and he's like, write down 25 things you want to be really, really good at in your life. And it took the apprentice, quite a bit of time to write them all down. And he said, all right, cross off the bottom 20, circle the top 5, focus on those. Like that's the kind of perspective that being a student athlete in college helped me to realize.
Nice. That's great. Last question about, lacrosse and wrestling. I'll probably talk a little bit more about wrestling, coaching and stuff, but talk about that transition from student athlete to nothing. I know I struggled from high school to college. I didn't compete in anything in college, and I struggled a lot with that transition, being a 3-sport athlete down to I'm just going to classes. And for you went from, college athlete to I think you were a substitute teacher for a little bit. Can you talk about that transition?
Yeah, that was the hardest probably 6 months of my life, graduating in May of 2015 until I started coaching wrestling again from Lodi in November of 2015. That's in that 6-month stretch. I moved back home, living with my parents, which I love them. It's awesome that they let me. But who wants to be 23 years old living with their parents? My girlfriend and I, we were still dating, but it was long distance, so I didn't get to see her. So that was really, really hard. All my friends were at different spots. I was broke. I didn't get a teaching job, so I'm working this summer job that I don't particularly enjoy. My girlfriend's gone. My friends are gone. I don't have wrestling. It was a really hard time. I remember I was pretty burnt out at the end of my wrestling career. I've been doing it for a really, really long time. My body was kind of breaking down. So I gave myself this excuse that I didn't have to work out. So for a long time there, I didn't work out. I didn't feel good about myself. It was dark, but thank God the Lodi Wrestling came and saved the day. Coach Perzik, once he heard I was moving back, he wanted to get me on staff right away. And, it sounds crazy, but being an assistant high school wrestling coach really helped me get back on the path of success.
Mm-hmm. It's a big identity struggle when you go from, being a student athlete to, like in your case, you're working a summer job. I know, again, when I graduated college, I had a job and everything, but I still didn't really know who I was. And I struggled a bit with that even after that. And now, like, I'm a dad. That's me. My first and foremost thing is being a dad. So that's my identity. That's who I am. That's who I want to be. So thanks for sharing that perspective. Like I said, it's a huge struggle for a lot of people that go from, being an athlete to not being an athlete. So you're currently a teacher. What led you down that path?
Yeah. So, at 16 years old, I just knew I wanted to be a coach. Like, I was so passionate about football and wrestling, and Dave Poles, our head football coach, Chris Perzik, my wrestling coach, Coach Poles was a special ed teacher. Coach Perzik was a phy ed teacher. Coach Rymon was a phy ed teacher. I just saw the impact that they had on people, how they influence people, students, athletes, community members, parents. And I was just like, I want that. And wanted to be a coach. I knew that the teacher coach balance, worked really, really well. So I just knew at 16 years old, like, yeah, I'm going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a coach. I don't know what I'm going to teach. I don't know what I'm going to coach, but this is what I'm going to do. So I got pretty blessed there. I didn't have a lot of those searchable moments. It kind of came to me.
Nice. You mentioned a couple of teachers there, but are there specific teachers or examples that really inspired you to become a teacher?
Yeah, I think it started in 7th grade too. I had this gentleman by the name of Jerry Hilliker who taught in the Lodi community for about 40 years. And I kind of caught him at the tail end of his career. Just his perspective on life was incredible. He was a social studies teacher, and I'm sure we learned some states and maybe a little bit about war and things like that. But yeah, his perspective was incredible. His history of Lodi, his knowledge. I mean, how did it go? He was teaching people's grandkids that he had. Like, maybe he had the grandparent when they were a senior, and then he had the grandchild when they were in like 7th grade. So it was nuts. So he was the one that kind of cracked the code of maybe this teaching thing isn't so bad. And then in 8th grade, I had another awesome teacher, Joe Jelnick, who's actually our high school principal right now. And then David Zilker, had those guys back to back for social studies and science. And they really lit the fire. I just saw the influence that they had, especially growing up in education, not really having many male teachers. To finally have some male teachers and just incredible ones like that, it was like, yeah, this is what I want to do.
So what drove you to be a special education teacher?
So I started out in college wanting to be a PE teacher. I think physical education is so important, especially now. I mean, look what the pandemic has done to our kids and whatnot. So I don't mean to say this by devaluing phy ed at all, but I wanted something maybe a little bit deeper. At that time, I had started joining a Bible study on campus and just getting really into my Christian faith and reading the Gospels, and Jesus's life and all he did. And I just saw how he was a servant leader, and he served everybody. And he especially served the poor, the sick, the sinners, the needy. And just as like my Christian faith really started to blossom, then I was like, what in education can I do to serve other people? And if you're in education, no matter what your capacity is, you're serving people. But just looking for that challenge, I was like, man, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it all the way. I'm going to go into special ed. And then I think I emailed Coach Poles late one night in the dorms, a long email, all these questions. And man, he responded. And after he kind of gave me the green light, I was just like, all right, talking to my advisor, I'm changing my credits. We're going we're going special ed.
Nice. Well, I'm sure your students are thankful that you made that change. How do your students impact your life?
It's crazy, but my students really helped me become a parent, because like the love I have for my students is surreal. I care about these guys and girls so much. I think about them on my drive home, on the weekends, during the summer. Like, at one point I was talking to my wife. I was like, babe, I don't know if I'm ready to have a kid. Like, if I love these students I teach so much, how much am I going to love a child of my own? But just the love that's had such an impact. And then also just, the struggle as well. When you have to be really hard on a kid for their benefit, it's not an easy thing to do. But when you see that it pays off, it's an incredible feeling. And then I'm in a position where I'm lucky enough to have the same kids, third, fourth, fifth grade. So to see that growth and the trajectory during those 3 years, it's incredible. And then being in this town, I get to coach some of the kids that I taught. I get to go to graduation and see them walk across the stage. It's pretty special.
Yeah, for sure. You're definitely making an impact. It sounds like they're making a great impact on your life too. So glad for that. Transitioning back to your coaching career, what are some of your coaching philosophies that you try to onto your student athletes?
Yeah, so I think a big one, and I mentioned it before, but it's a pretty big bullet point. We say a lot, like the struggle will strengthen you. Wrestling is not an easy sport, and guys need to know that going in. And I remember at practice in college, we were kind of dogging it and saying how hard it was. And our assistant coach, Ross Needham, he's like, I don't want to hear how hard this is again. Like, you guys knew it was hard and you signed up for it. Like, you signed up. I didn't sign you up. So why are you here? It made a lot of sense. Like, wow, I knew what I was getting into. The struggle is going to strengthen me. So we say that to our guys a lot. Also, you don't get what you deserve. You get what you earn. I think it was Tom or Terry Brands that said that, and it made a lot of sense. Like, we all think we deserve these things, wins and titles and championships, but do we really earn them? Especially in a sport like wrestling, everything that you get is what you put in. So that's kind of a big deal. Our goal at this program, winning, is a short-term goal. We definitely think that's really, really important, but our long-term goal is just to have relationships with these guys. We want to be invited to their weddings and know their kids and see them around town and just have these great relationships with them. There's other programs I've heard about or not been a part of, but just know of that, they just grind their kids and it's all about wins, and then never see you again. That's not what we want to be. We want to be able to win in the short term, but then also love these guys for a long time. And then I think one of the last things is, if you want your guys to bleed for you, you got to be willing to bleed for them. You got to put the time in. You got to go through workouts with them. You have to respect them for you to respect, for them to reciprocate that respect back. You got to be all in, especially in a sport like wrestling. I can't show up for 3 months out of the year and expect to have a great program. It's got to be all year round, basically every day, a lot of times, multiple times a day. So if I want my guys to be all in, I got to be all in too. I got to show them the way.
Yeah, for sure. How do you, working in coaching in a smaller community, how do you get the numbers? You out in the halls trying to get kids in the wrestling room?
Yeah, I think recruiting is like our number one goal. Recruiting and then retaining. I wear a Lodi wrestling shirt every day. I got Lodi wrestling shirts in my room. I try to get to know kids' names really, really well. So it starts at a young age, and there's no way that a kid will ever slip through the cracks by the time he's in sixth grade that he hasn't heard about wrestling and been offered an opportunity to wrestle. So it's just it's a 24/7, 365 job just to recruit, and then just as importantly, perhaps more importantly, to retain these guys, to know their names, to develop relationships with them, not to push competition at a young age, to have fun at practice, to know their parents, to communicate with their families. And thankfully, we have an awesome alumni base that we have a lot of former wrestlers who, their kids wrestle in our program now, and they're kind of doing some of that boots on the ground recruiting as well. So that's helped out tremendously.
Yeah, and it sounds like you have a really great pipeline from your youth programs, from middle school and high school. So it's great to see all those alumni involved. I remember a lot of the, being that I've gone to the state wrestling tournament for 20 some years now, I remember a lot of those. I remember Kelby Mack. I remember Jake Madigan. I don't know if he's involved at all anymore, but there's a lot of awesome alumni for Lodi. So glad they're still involved. Who are some of the more impactful people or coaches that you've had throughout your life?
Yeah, Coach Perzik, right? He was my high school head coach. He's a current assistant of mine. So basically, when he stepped down, I was as a head assistant. We kind of flipped roles. And man, we've been through a lot of stuff together. From competing when I was in high school. I got hurt my senior year real bad. I missed a lot of time. I didn't have a lot of confidence and faith in myself, but the confidence that he gave me was incredible. And then just how patient he was when the transition occurred, his loyalty to continue to coach. He's been incredible. Coach Jack Reinwan, who really built this program, he's the legend. Knows him, whether they've ever been involved in wrestling or not, just loves him. When I was in high school, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I went to a camp with him one time, and it was a phenomenal experience. Just being around him for that short amount of time was great.
So he was my high school PE teacher as well. And just the way that he treated every student, whether they were in sports or not, whether they had a tough background or not, just like the respect that he gave to every student, how endearing he was, the respect that they reciprocated back to him. Like, it was, at 16 years old, I didn't understand a whole lot, but I wish I would have understood back then what I was witnessing with how he was teaching people and just loving them. It just made me want to do it to others. Coach Laverne Ziegler, middle school coach for 38 years. He was really the rock and glue. Middle school wrestling, youth wrestling, it is not glorious at all. So many people, they want to be at the high school where your name's on the program and you're getting credit for wins and you're hugging guys when they have big matches, all those cool moments. When you're the middle school coach, you don't unfortunately get that. But everyone who's went through this program knows what he was, what he did. And we're sure as heck going to miss him. And then lastly, just Dave Bowles, the head football coach. He's exactly what you want your small town high school football coach to be. He's all about integrity and character and doing things the right way and treating people. And he's not afraid to have hard talks. I remember in high school one time, he grabbed a friend of mine. He's like, man, there's a thin line between cocky and confident, and you guys are walking that line. He really helped me to kind of focus on other people, because growing up, I really, really lacked humility. Very, very selfish, thought about myself, didn't think about teammates and coaches, other people. And Dave Bowles really, really helped me with that perspective. So I have to mention him in this as well.
Great. All right. I could talk wrestling with you forever. So let's change gears. I'm sure people might be interested in some other stuff. So I know I did doing some research. I saw there was a profile of you done through the WEA Member Benefits magazine, kind of talking about your financial acumen and things like that. What led you to diving deep into that?
Oh man, it was out of necessity. I was so broke when I graduated from college, and every college kid is, but like overdraft broke. It's one of those things that I think we do this in life, whether it's a text you don't want to respond to or an email, or there's like these tasks that that they're not going to be enjoyable as you just put them off. Well, for me, that was checking my bank account, right? I knew it was so low. I was scared to look at it, but I was like, whatever, I'll probably have enough. So on my way home from college, my car's packed up. I stopped at 3 places. I stopped to get gas. I stopped to get something to eat. I stopped somewhere else. I can't remember the other place. I overdrafted every single one of those transactions.
Oh,
$35 overdraft per transaction times 3. I think that's 105, plus gas, food. So when I got home from college, I was negative $150 in my checking account with tens of thousands of dollars in student debt. When I put it all together, I panicked. I was like, I got to change. Like, excuse me, something needs to change. So from that point forward, I just worked a lot. I worked every side job I could get, nights, weekends, summer, spring break. I lived at home, so I was able to save some money. I lived a very, very frugal lifestyle. And I just grinded really, really hard for a long time to kind of just get to where I was treading water. Because when I graduated at 23 years old, I was drowning, and it was a very scary outlook for what the rest of my life could look like.
What are some of the big benefits that the WEA has? I think in that article you talked a lot about some of the retirement stuff and things like that.
Yeah, so being a state employee, obviously you have some benefits, with like for our school district, they help pay our insurance, which is obviously a huge cost to a lot of people. So that helps. With the WEA, they have the WRS, Wisconsin Retirement System, X amount of dollars from our paycheck goes into that fund, and then the school district matches, and then they invest it. So, it's like a pension, you retire. So those are like two of the main benefits. But WA, they do a lot of great resources, and unfortunately, not a lot of people take advantage of them. Every year you can reach out to them and schedule like a 1-hour free consultation and look at your accounts, look at maybe your loans, insurances, all these different things. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't take them up on their offers. They have tremendous information. I just feel like it goes untapped a lot of the time.
We'll make sure to put that in the show notes for this episode. We'll get a link out there so people can go out and review that if they're able to. So yeah, sure. Thanks for sharing that. You and your wife own an investment property, is that correct?
A couple of them, yeah.
A couple of them. What led you down that path?
Yeah, so like I said, it was I grinded for a long time, and a lot of it was manual labor, and I was just to the point where I was tired. My wife and I wanted to get married. We wanted to start a family. The lifestyle I was living, wouldn't have been sustainable. So did some research, talked to just mentors, successful people. Like, how'd you get there? How did you do that? Did a lot of podcast listening, read a lot of books, and I had a lot of knowledge for quite a while. I was in like this analysis paralysis. Like I was just afraid to make a move. And finally, we just jumped at an opportunity to buy a rental property, and it's led to another, and hopefully we can keep that snowball rolling. And the reason for that is just to have, some freedom. I'm not a materialistic person at all. I drive a beat up car. I live in 1-bedroom apartments that I own. I've never parked in a garage. I don't take fancy vacations. All the materialism things in the world, they don't mean anything to me. I want freedom to be able to give my time back to other people. If that means having to stay home with a kid for an extended amount of time, we have the freedom to do that. If that means that my neighbor's sick and we can help them out financially, let's do that. Where when I graduated college, I wasn't in a position to help other people. Now we're getting there. And that's just a good feeling knowing that we're using our time and ability to help other people, because that's the point. That's the whole goal.
Yeah, that's so great that you're able to do that. And that analysis paralysis, I kind of get into that same kind of thing too. It took me 1.5 years to get to the point to launch this podcast. Something I spent a lot of time researching and trying to figure out. And it definitely took me a long time to do that. But it's really cool to see that you and your wife are doing this, to have that freedom, to have the ability to really do what you want. And, you're a pretty young guy to have 2 investment properties, be a head wrestling coach. And, you've done a lot so far in life. And one thing that I'm really excited to talk to you about is you're a new dad. I see that smile on your face. I just had my second daughter was just born like 3.5 weeks ago. So welcome to the Girl Dad Club. What's it like? How's it feel?
It's crazy, in a weird way, it feels natural, like it just feels right. But then on the flip side, like it's really hard to be a new parent. And that's one thing, like, I don't think our society does a great job of, is like training or just notifying new parents of how hard it's going to be. You see the Instagram posts and the Facebook posts and all the cute photos and all this stuff. You don't see the struggles. You don't see the tears. You don't see you can't do what you want to do. Your hobbies are gone, this and that. So I have some friends right now who are pregnant, and I've just been having an honest conversation with them. Like, guys, it's not easy. It's worth it. It's 100% worth it. Don't get me wrong, but it's not easy. Just to hopefully help new parents prepare for what's coming down the tracks at them. Yeah,
it's my wife breastfeeds, and we have there's some times where we're going through this door. My oldest daughter's 2.5. This is actually a specific example from a couple of weeks ago. We had to go get groceries, and my youngest daughter was crying, needing to eat. So walking through this door, I'm pushing the stroller with my 2.5-year-old. My wife's pushing the cart, breastfeeding my youngest daughter. It was crazy to think about, but I have so much respect for my wife for all the things that she's gone through. With our first child, she had some breastfeeding issues and things like that. And, she had an oversupply. So we donated a lot of breast milk to a lot of different folks to help people. So that kind of ties back to that servant thing that you were talking about, is, doing things for others, she definitely put the time in there. But like you said, being a dad, having a kid, being able to see him grow up and learn new things, it's one of the best experiences in my life, at least. Has it helped? Has it changed your perspective on anything?
Not yet, but I'm sure it's coming.
Yeah.
At least in regards to how I feel about my daughter and stuff yet. Like right now, it's just love and a little frustration when she's crying and I can't help her.
Yep.
But as she gets older and walks and laughs and talks, I think that's going to change. But just from my wife's perspective, a catchphrase in my life is the struggle will strengthen you. And through the past couple of weeks since we've had our child, I love my wife more than I ever have before, because I just see, what she's going through and how tough she is. And man, before the daughter, I wouldn't want to maybe make dinner or do dishes, but now I want to. I'm going to go home after this. I'm going to clean the sink and put dinner on the stove for my wife, just because I love and appreciate her so much and know what she's done and gone through. So it's been great for our relationship, just having those hard times, Yeah. The only other thing I think has changed is I just have a desire to be home more. My wife and I have lived incredibly busy lives since we moved in together. It's, I coached football, I coached wrestling, I opened the weight room, so I'm gone mornings, nights. She coached basketball, she coached volleyball. I worked part-time. She's with her friends and different things like that and doing different things with our investment properties. So we were just gone a lot. Now we just want to be home. We just want to go home, watch Jeopardy and watch Wheel of Fortune with each other and just pass the kid around. We're at peace, and that's something in this chaotic world we don't find a lot.
Yep, that's for sure. All right, so I can't let you go without talking about the Packers. I know you're a big Packer fan. What do you expect out of this season?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think this is more a heart than a head answer, but I truly think that the stars are going to align in 2021. The Green Bay Packers are going to be Super Bowl champions. Week 1 was an anomaly. When everyone was freaking out, I want those people turning their Packers cards, because those are the same people mailing it in that, when they do win the Super Bowl, they're like, I knew it. I told you so. Come on, guys. Adversity is either going to make you or break you. And I really think that the adversity of the offseason and where this franchise at is going to make them. I mean, look at the Bucs last year. All the adversity, Tom Brady coming in and they struggle, and then Antonio Brown and then injuries, it led him to a Super Bowl title. So I think that's going to be the same for the Packers. And then unfortunately, I think Rodgers is gone. I think Adams is gone. We do a small rebuild with Jordan Love, but we have a lot of talent. We're going to acquire some draft capital. We're going to get under the cap. This franchise is going to always be good. We're the Green Bay Packers. Come on.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I mean, the Bucs had the exact same loss to the Saints as we did last year, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl. So, it's how you rebound from those losses. So I'm right there with you. Couple of rapid fire questions, and then I have one final question for you after that. So what's your favorite restaurant in Lodi or the surrounding area?
Well, this is hotly contested because some people don't call it a restaurant, but my favorite restaurant is Quick Trip. They serve food.
Yep.
So, Quick Trip originated in LaCrosse, which is where I went to college. One of our apartments that we lived at was right next to a Quick Trip, and I'm not proud to admit that there was oftentimes I would eat all 3 meals a day at Quick Trip. I haven't done that since. I'm actually on a Quick Trip cleanse right now to kind of cleanse my body, mind, soul, and spirit of it. But yeah, I love it. It's so good. It's so cheap. It's so convenient, and it's not healthy, but it's also not like McDonald's or something else. So at least I tell myself that.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I mean, I used to commute up to Madison every day, so it was an hour up and an hour back, and I'd stop at Quick Trip quite a bit, and that was part of my weight gain. But I still stop at Quick Trip a couple times a week and try to just make better choices when I go there. And I've lost 100 pounds and I still eat Quick Trip, so I think it's fine. Next question. What's your favorite local event here in Wisconsin?
Yeah, I love the Lodi Fair. It's kind of like a county fair, but Lodi hosts it, meaning there's a lot of rides. There's a beer tent with bands and whatnot. There's tractor pull, demo derby. There's cattle barns. And one of the coolest things is that there's an alumni softball tournament going on throughout the whole fair. So all 4 days, different diamonds. You got the class of 2021 playing the class of 1983. Like, it's pretty cool. And obviously, I'm biased because I'm from this community, but there's a celebrity pie auction where you raise money for a fundraiser. So I always look forward to the Lodi Fair. Love it. But Camp Randall opening day is special. Especially during a day or night game, it doesn't matter. But those fans are crazed; they're ready to get back out. Downtown Madison is busy. That's pretty special. And then Team State at the Fieldhouse. I think it's the best high school atmosphere in the state of Wisconsin. And granted, I'm biased; I haven't been to a ton. But when you have the fans on top of you, all these small communities piling buses in, and they're rowdy, and that first takedown happens, and people are screaming too, like. The field house is pretty awesome for Team State.
This might shock you, knowing that I've gone to the individual state tournament for 20 some years. I've never been to the team state tournament.
Oh, this year.
So I'll have to get up there and watch Lodi.
Yeah, hopefully we can make that promise happen.
Yeah. All right. Final rapid fire question. Where's your favorite place to hang out in Wisconsin besides the Lodi Wrestling Room?
Yeah, good point. My grandparents own a cottage up near Hayward, Wisconsin, and we go up there usually twice a year, Labor Day weekend, Memorial Day weekend. As we have kids, we'll be able to take summer trips and whatnot, but gone there since I was young. It's where I asked my wife to marry me on the pier, so that was pretty cool. It's where we came up with a name for our children. We didn't know what we were having, boy or girl. So we came up with some names on that same pier that we got engaged on. So it's just, it's a special place.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. All right, last question for you, Cody. When all is said and done, what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Yeah, it's a great question. Probably the most important one. I would say it's evolving. As I mentioned earlier, growing up, I was just so selfish, focused on me and my success and my accolades. And looking back, that's my biggest regret in life, how I probably hurt friends and families and teammates and things like that. It's why I struggled as a young coach, right? But I've had some events happen in my life, some different tragedies. And when you hit rock bottom, what do you turn to? Everyone has their thing. And I just turned to Christ. I had a strong base in college. So now I just really want my legacy to be a legacy of Christ. There's a song that I listen to. It's called Nobody But Jesus. And it just talks about, that the guy singing it is saying, I'm living for the world to see nobody but Jesus. Like, when people see me in my tour and my success, I want them to know that it's not me, it's Christ. As I get older and learn more about Christ and love him more, I'm much more bold talking about him. I'm not ashamed like I used to be. I've been called a Jesus freak. You're right. And I just wear that. So I just want my legacy to be one of servant leadership, that Christ, just following his path.
Awesome. Well, Cody, I appreciate the time. Thanks for hopping on Wisco Legacy.